Welcome, welcome, welcome to episode number 6 of Bard's Backlog. I am your host, Josh Gallegos, and joining me this week, the casual, Jared Benson.
Hello, everyone. You're everyone's favorite mediocre gamer.
How have you been, man? Things going well?
Yeah, things are going well. It's fun. Today, we're doing things a little different. I can see you today. We're video chatting via the Instagram, which is a great way to video chat, honestly. It's my new favorite. I prefer it to Google Duo and FaceTime and all that stuff. So
why is that?
I don't know why, because it's so accessible, honestly. You can just pop in, send a voice message, send a video message to your friends. It's combined with Snapchat. You know, it doesn't have all the filters and stuff, but like I don't use those filters anyway, and I hate Snapchat. But I just like it. It's very accessible. It's very easy to use, very straightforward. So it rivals the ease of use that even Google Duo has, which is my second favorite.
Yeah, you kind of surprised me. I was just working. I'm doing a little bit of work for my dad today, so I was just kind of plugging away at that, and then all of a sudden I got this Instagram notification for a live video, and I have never used this before. So I was very surprised, but it works really well. And
it does.
It's very clear.
Yep.
And it's not like hitching or anything. So
nope, not at all, not a single time.
Yeah, this is weird actually, because this is, and nobody I think knows this, but this is our first episode actually even seeing each other while doing this.
That's correct. We tried to do the first time, and Zoom just did not want to work for us. So
yeah, and it's definitely a different like feel. Like when you can actually connect with the human on the other side. It's very different from when you're just listening to them over the phone and then trying to get a cadence and everything. So this is good.
Now I don't have to say air quotes. I can do air quotes, and you can see me doing air quotes.
The problem is we don't have video for the listeners.
That's
so
true.
We have to be aware of that. But that is probably going to help, at least in our communication here. So this is, of course, Bard's Backlog, the ever-growing catalog of video games inducted into the Hall of Games. We, Jared and I, are the gatekeepers and subsequent executioners of any video game candidate, including today's. You guys can submit questions to us via Twitter. I am at VideoGameBard, and Jared is
at Jared T. Ben.
And that is for our default segment for the games we'll be covering. Unfortunately, I did not announce the next game that we'll be covering last week. But that actually turned out to be a good thing, because we had a bit of an issue with the game we were going to cover, which we're actually going to talk about for our default segment this week. But I am going to do my best to actually say at the end of the podcast what we'll be covering next time.
I'll try to remind you.
Thank you, because I definitely totally skipped out on that last time. And we were talking so much about Mario Odyssey, which is the game we covered last time, that I was so into that conversation, it was hard for me to like almost disengage from it. Like even after we finished, we ended up talking about it for another like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So, really great game, and of course you guys can check out that episode recorded last week, episode number 5. This one, episode number 6, is hopefully our last COVID episode.
Yes, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I was just talking to Jared and updating him here in Colorado, which is where I'm at. Our stay-at-home or shelter-at-home or whatever that specific one is has been elongated until May 9th, which I deem a bit unfortunate. I was hoping that this thing would be over, and it was supposed to be over this week, but I'm going to have to push through a little bit longer with this quarantine life that we're living. And of course, even when it does open up, it's not going to open up full scale.
Correct, yeah.
There are phases, and that's how it's working over there, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're considering slowly opening everything back up, but the goal here in Florida, where I'm at, is definitely to open things back up. That's definitely the goal we want to push. Mm-hmm. As anyone who follows politics knows. And just a quick disclaimer, on my Twitter, I talk about culture, politics, counseling, anime, video games, all the above. So if you tweet at me a question about video games, I definitely will get to it, because I love talking about all kinds of things, but we can also talk politics there as well. But if you know anything about politics, you know Governor DeSantis here in Florida is a close ally of Trump, and red states, Texas, Georgia, have been pushing to open more aggressively. So that's the direction we're headed, at least, which seems to be opposite of Colorado.
Yeah, unfortunately. And it is what it is. Like, I don't necessarily condone like the immediate opening up idea. Like, I'm not really for like everyone going back to groups, you know, putting on concerts and everything right away, as some people are. Like, I think it's wise to take the steps, especially after having instituted such an intense lockdown in the first place. I think it's wise to do it in tiers. So I'm just looking forward to getting out of this phase.
Yes.
Personally.
Get back in the gym. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes, to get back in the gym, to get back into even just like I've been telling my wife, I just want to take her to a restaurant.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
There's just a feeling to it of just sitting down, having someone like help you out and get your food to you and everything. Like, I miss it. I miss it so much. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to just take my wife out on a date again, go see a movie again, like these little like creature comforts that I really don't need.
Yep. Exactly.
But that I'm just a spoiled brat in a thriving society that I want to do, and like I want to use these parts of the world again. Yeah. And so we'll see. Thank you, Jared, for being with me, because
you're welcome.
I mean, some people aren't. Some people are all about the lockdown, and then other people are like totally about like this being a conspiracy. I don't know if you've read anything about this, but a lot of people think that this might have been biological warfare, like thrown at us from the depths of China or something, which I don't think it is.
I mean, you have the CDC right across the street from a food market, you know? So, I mean, you do wonder about things like that. I'm not advocating for it. You hear some crazy things like 5G. People are saying 5G is the cause of this.
Yeah.
They've been planning and working with 5G for years now, trying to get this up and running. My uncle works at Verizon. He says they've been testing 5G for a year and a half, seriously for a year and a half at the very short at the minimum, and so they've been wanting to do 5G for years. Verizon's been laying fiber optic cable for a while. We would have known if this stuff was causing COVID a year and a half ago. You know what I mean? So crazy things like that. But I also feel for a lot of my friends who have anxiety and are just very nervous because they know their grandparents are older, or they know someone immunocompromised, just trying to be careful. So I feel for those people as well. But
no, I agree. And I definitely have seen a whole new side of myself and my own anxiety through this whole thing.
Sure.
But I think it's been healthy. Like, it makes me more aware of my own personal well-being as well as those around me and how I might be affecting them. I'm very cautious to cough in public now. And I get very nervous now around people who are coughing, even though I really probably don't need to be. But that's the other thing. Like, I'm really not too worried about myself because of my age and because of the fact that I know I'm healthy. But at the same time, it has put this whole question mark of, but you never know, like so deeply into like, not just me, but like all of society, that I'm really curious to see how we transition out of that now.
Yes.
And lots of people are not willing to transition out of it yet. And that includes Colorado, which is fine, which is totally fine. But I really can't wait till we're out of this. But hopefully this is our last one. And after this, we can actually, well, I mean, we're in two different spots, so this isn't going to change for us really, Jared, but maybe eventually we can do this in person. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
plans in the making.
I had a random question I wanted to ask Jared before we jumped into the games we play in. With this being an election year, and we're talking about politics with COVID and everything like that. There's a lot that happens leading up to what is November. What is it? November 8th.
I think it's November 8th, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made and a lot of thinking that needs to be thought. But this is the most important question I wanted to ask you in regards to this whole situation. What video game character do you think would be a good president?
Oh man, that's a good question. The first person my mind goes to is Zelda, because I don't know. That's the first person because it'd shut everyone up who says we need a woman, and I don't mind as long as she's qualified, right? So like that, let's do that. Let's score political points and have someone who is only for the good and is well spoken and all that stuff. So let's do it. Now I need to be careful here. I'm no problem with a female president. In fact, I really like Tulsi Gabbard, but that I don't want to do it just because she's a woman. But that was a hot. Following politics, that was a hot topic this year to talk about.
Well, you were.
I saw so many tweets that were like, "We owe Elizabeth Warren an apology." I'm like, who does? Look, she ran a campaign and lost. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Same with Tulsi. So here we are.
You were a big Yang Gang guy.
Oh yeah, love Andrew Yang. I have to admit the faults. He ran a not great campaign, honestly. Very unorganized, very unprofessional at times. But he did attract very authentic people. They were just being themselves, and people are flawed, as you know. So it is what it is. He's suing the state of New York for not holding the primary now. He's got some backbone. I like that about him.
That's cool.
We'll see where he goes in the future. But yeah, Zelda probably is my answer. How about you?
That's a very tame answer. I would probably go with Tom Nook, actually.
Tom Nook?
What I was thinking. I just feel like he has the mind for it, like, and
you don't think Isabella instead?
No, Isabella's a little bit too like, I don't know. I feel like she'd get stepped on, Tom Nook has that backbone, and he is willing to like insert himself into all sorts of sticky situations, and he pulls it off with grace too. Yeah. Like he makes it seem like such a wonderful thing that you're getting this horrifically large loan.
Yeah.
He's just got that spin, I just feel like he would be able to, not only like is he like great at developing islands, but I feel like he'd just be great at, I don't know, developing the country. I don't know. That's just kind of just the thought process as I was thinking through, like, who are some like savvy but also like have that intense edge that you need characters, and Tom
That is a fantastic answer. I love that.
But with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into our very first segment for this week, Jared. The games we playin'. I'll go ahead and start because I have a game that I've been playing that I've been really itching to talk about, and I wanted to bring it up last week, and I actually totally forgot to write it down. It's called Reigns, and it's a little game on mobile that you can purchase. It's not one that you can download for free, but I think it's well worth the purchase. It's basically the whole idea is that you are a king in charge of a kingdom, and the whole game is built on just simple decisions, and it really plays on the idea that I think our generation is used to in like a Tinder, which is the swipe left, swipe right. Just the simple concept, left or right. You make a simple decision, and it affects everything else. And I call it the card swiping monarchy. So all it is a card pops up in front of your phone, and it's a character that's from your kingdom, one of your subjects, and it can be like a noble lord, it can be the jester pops up there. After a while you get like the executioner and the church is a big factor, and even like odd characters, like later you get like a witch, you get like a weird prophet dude, but all these people are coming into your court, essentially, is how I'm viewing it. And they present to you a problem. And they'll say, like... And sometimes it's like a legitimate problem that needs to be dealt with immediately. Like, help! Like, they're what are they called? Like, barbarians raiding the villages. And you have to decide whether to send the army or to close the castle gates. And you just, like... And it tells you immediately, like, which direction... like which direction to do and what that is going to do. Like, it'll give you the answer, but you have to basically make the decision, and that affects your kingdom. And the kingdom is built on 4 different like meters. There are meters that you fill, and one of them is actually the church, one of them is the people, one of them is the army, and then the other one is your treasury, like the money that you have in the kingdom. And every decision you make will affect all four of these in different capacities. And so it really makes a really interesting playthrough, where you're just swiping left, swiping right, making these decisions, reading what the people are saying, and a lot of different like storylines kind of pop up throughout with these little characters, and they give you really weird and bizarre things to do. Like one time, some random lord like had gone out on a hunt, and he comes over, and he pops up on my screen, and he says, "Hey, we went out and we found these mushrooms. We have a blue mushroom and a brown mushroom. What would you like to do?" And then you can either take the blue mushroom or you can take the brown mushroom. And if you take the brown one, nothing happens. But if you take the blue one, you go on the wildest like trip, and you start to like have dogs talking to you, and like all these like really weird things happen in the game. And it was like this most random like bizarre thing in the middle of this game that I thought was just like a fun little nice touch. And really like the whole game is just full of you making decisions like this. And the way that it works, when it gets down brass tacks to it, is you're basically just trying to stay on top of your kingdom as long as you possibly can. By like year, so, and the other way that it works is it goes by years. So every decision you make, a year passes in your kingdom, and that affects your kingdom in a certain way. But there's lots of narrative routes to take as you go along, lots of weird subjects to meet, and you're basically just trying to stay on top of the kingdom up until you get killed. So as your meters get changed, the different meters will affect you in different ways, and you can get killed in all sorts of horrific ways. Like actually one of the ways that you can get trapped in a dungeon, and you end up getting killed by a skeleton.
So it's play till you die?
Kind
of like how long you last?
Yeah, so you just try and last for however many years you can, and then that's like one playthrough. And that it's sectioned off as like that was Richard the King's reign.
Oh, okay.
And his reign is in the past, and then you take on the next, the son of the next king, and then can play through that guy and make new decisions and see how you can progress further and further. The furthest I've made it is like 35 years. The shortest, I died in 2 years one time because I fell deeply in love with this girl who assassinated me.
Oh, nice.
And so there's a lot of just like cool little paths and interesting things to do and take. So
and speaking
a really
of
fun mobile game.
A really fun mobile game. Well, I like it. I feel like I saw that advertised on the Google, but I was playing other games at the time. But speaking of assassinations, why don't you just go ahead and say the second one? What else are you playing?
Yeah. Sorry, getting a quick little drink here. The second game I've been playing,
I'm excited about
has
this one.
been Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So unlike Reigns, it's not a very simple just like swipe left, swipe left, swipe right game. This is a AAA game, and this is kind of the game I decided to play after playing Control, which is what I was talking about last week. And Control, really good. I actually finished up, has a really great ending. Highly recommend that game to everybody. But I picked up Assassin's Creed Origins because I was wanting kind of just a big open world game. And this is probably... And this has been the thing that stuck out to me. Have you ever played an Assassin's Creed game?
No,
Jared?
I have not been privileged with that option.
That's totally fine. They have a very specific feel to them. And they've been around for long enough that if you had played one, you'd probably have an immediate sense of what this game is. So if any of the listeners that are in the audience have played an Assassin's Creed game, this is just another one, Assassin's Creed Origins. It's the Egyptian one. And I would say this is probably the prettiest game I've played in quite a while, honestly. Just the way that this is the thing that really like draws me to Assassin's Creed games. It's the worlds that they create. The big conceit about Assassin's Creed is the fact that you are playing through points of history, and you're playing through geographic locations that have some sort of significance. So in the very first one, you play through, I think you're like in the Crusades, and you're in Italy during that time. The second one is definitely in Italy again. And then over the course of the different games, they've gone through different locations. But the way that they just like take these historical moments, they put in a lot of historical characters, and then they build out this world in a really they always build them out in really interesting and fun ways. Like in England, it's called Assassin's Creed Syndicate is the specific game. It's set in England in like the London bustling like industrial age, and it's a really cool just like world to just poke around in and explore. And you meet characters like you meet Karl Marx, you meet Charles Dickens. But in Origins, which takes place in Egypt, you see and are able to interact with a ton of just really awesome locations, and it's really been what stuck out to me more than anything. Obviously, there's a lot of characters from that time period that you play alongside, and that includes like what's her name, the female pharaoh,
Cleopatra.
Cleopatra, yes,
Yeah.
Thank you, Jared. That's the character I just met actually, and it's around that time period. I don't know if you know much about that historical time period, Jared, but that's actually when Egypt was being overtaken by the Greeks. So the game not only has like these really awesome Egyptian locations, like the Nile, like the pyramids, but it also has like new like this vibrant clash of like two civilizations and two different like totally different feeling like aesthetics as far as like architecture is concerned, as far as like the characters in them. Like half of the population is wearing robes and the other half have your classic like Egyptian garb.
Yeah.
And you can go to places like Alexandria where they have a giant library, but then you're also like deep in the middle of like some oasis next to the Nile where there are crocodiles coming out and hippopotamuses coming out of the Nile, like attacking you, stuff like that. So it's a really just gorgeous, beautiful game, and it's the location that sticks out to me. And I love me some Assassin's Creed, so it's been great to just jump back into.
And you're a history buff too.
I
would say that. Isn't that a huge appeal of the games?
Absolutely. The way that they just are, and they're really like well researched games.
Yeah.
Like you get a lot of like actual historical moments that happen, and a lot of the different locations and the way that the design is built into it, like all of that is pulled straight from history. So it's all very authentic, and that makes it like just an awesome thing to just jump into and explore. Now this game has a rejiggered control scheme, and the combat is very different from the other Assassin's Creed games. Back when it was released, it was it was a reboot, was the word I was looking for. It was a reboot of the franchise. They had taken, I think, 1 or 2 years off, whereas before they had been releasing a game every single year, and so they all kind of started to feel the same. Like, sure, a new location, but just kind of like the same format over and over and over. This one was a reboot, Assassin's Creed Origins specifically, and so they took some time, really reworked a lot of the systems in the game, and it doesn't always click well, I would say. The more I've gotten into it, I've been able to kind of adjust to the way it feels, but it definitely feels a bit different from the other games, and that is actually to its detriment, I would say, at first. But the world more than makes up for it, and it's a giant map. Like, this game puts Skyrim to shame as far as the map
I like
is
to hear
concerned.
that, yeah.
It is huge and full of things to do, and it actually is a bit overwhelming. I think when I looked up how long the game was going to be able, or it was going to take me, it takes, I think, probably like 35 hours for the main story, but if you wanted to be able to just explore and do your own thing, it could take up to 120 hours.
Oh man, that's what
which
I'm
is about. Yeah, which is insane. But all of that to say, like, they really did something unique with this game. And it really does still have that Assassin's Creed appeal. Like, I can't help but enjoy myself, like, jumping onto a person and stabbing them with his switchblade that comes out of his hand. Like, there's that, like, classic, like, this
what made the game
specific
famous.
Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that made the game famous, and that really just, you can't duplicate anywhere else. And it's just a joy every time that you jump off of a high tower and fall straight into a pile of hay, which is like another Assassin's Creed thing. it's a great game, and one that I have been thoroughly enjoying and will continue to enjoy playing as I go on. And I will be probably still playing it by the next time we get into this, do this podcast, because it is just huge. It is ginormous. But I've been really thoroughly enjoying that, and that's been my nice AAA fix as we've been playing these other games.
There you go.
So, Jared, we both have been playing a little game named Animal Crossing New Horizons.
What?
But I want you to tell me about your experience.
Oh my goodness, Josh,
going?
where do I start? No, I'm excited that this is a good, this is a teaser for when we do eventually cover this on the podcast, because we will. It's a fantastic game. We're both playing it. We're both enjoying it. Me as an original OG Animal Crossing player from way back when they first released it for the GameCube back in, 2004, 6, something like that?
I think so,
Long time ago. Feels like it's only like 15, 14 years ago, something like that. They, that original game was so unique. It was Nintendo's version of Sims, but a lot more limited. And they had, so much to do. But this game takes it above and beyond. The level of customization available in this game is just fantastic. And it's appealing to the group of people that reject Minecraft for being too difficult, too overwhelming, and not aesthetic enough. Minecraft is a very unique look, but it's not quite aesthetic. It's almost, it's like engineers design it, which they did. But the Animal Crossing New Horizons craze is people's desire to design and control limited spheres almost unlimitedly. You're constrained to an island, but also the online version was not available in the original version of the game. And has only gotten better in games past until it's culminated now into the fact that, like, Josh texted me yesterday and said, "Hey, dude, Karina has this certain product for a certain price." So I jumped on it, and
those turnips, man.
Those turnips, dude, linked up real good. It's a great, great game. I can't wait to cover it, and it's just a wonderful game.
Yeah, well, the goal for me, I'm thinking right now for when we cover it, is that we see those credits roll. I really feel like that is like the moment for the game that I would feel comfortable actually covering it, and that takes time. The game is built into like real time.
Yeah, you do have to take your time. Yep.
It's a 24-hour period. You can only do so many specific things in a day to progress the game. Are you time skipping?
I'm not time skipping. I think
okay.
I could have, but I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And Josh is exactly right. It would be unfair of us to cover this game prematurely. It deserves all the attention we could get it. From what I'm just, we've just dipped our toes in the water, but it's been fantastic so far.
Yeah, I'm glad you're not time skipping, because I feel like that is a way to cheapen the Animal Crossing experience, because a lot of it is like this other little world that you can, like you said, like, so control and design and make your own, and really just like a second life that you're living in where everything is a lot happier and you can make money just catching bugs and fishing, and there's no like problems of life there. It's all just like a beautiful little paradise.
You guys should go watch PewDiePie do his video where it's entitled like "Marge's cheating on me" in Animal Crossing. It's hilarious. You need to go see it. It'll open your eyes to the expanse of the game, and I again can't wait for Josh and I to give the lowdown on it.
I'd like to watch that, actually. I haven't watched a PewDiePie episode or video in quite a while. I just saw someone propose in Animal Crossing to their girlfriend.
They proposed?
So that's very interesting. Yeah. They just like set up a whole little like section of their island to like, and then they like led the person over there and then proposed. Like, it has like these cool little moments like that, because it's like this.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Really?
Yeah, it seems a little.
I thought it was cool.
See,
like,
I mean, that's if you both are passionate about something. Hey, go for it. What am I supposed to? Some women are passionate about flowers.
Not.
Some women are passionate about pixelated flowers.
Yeah. But it's just like you're able to kind of like manifest these little moments like that on your own, like create them doing your own thing. Like, I also saw people like do they made their entire island into an obstacle course.
Yep.
And then they had like 4 people over and were just having them run through it and try and get through, and then there was a prize at the end, So
that's cool.
Yeah, great game. We'll definitely be covering that once we get through it, but that will take time, and that's what it's all about. It's all about putting in that time. Jared, you've also been playing another game here that I know is near and dear
infamous
to your heart.
Near and dear, infamous, near and dear. I introduced my family to Catan, the board game, Settlers of Catan. When Josh first introduced it to me back in 2018, summer we spent together, it's a loaded game. It causes all kinds of fights, even more than Monopoly does, and I love it. And I found it on the Switch. It was like half off or something like that, so I downloaded it, and I've enjoyed it. It's a great time killer. The mechanics are not as smooth, especially when you're trading with other people, but it is certainly fun. If you love the board game Catan, you will love this. It comes with all of the Harbor Master and Ore for Wool and different scenarios you can play, campaign. Great compatibility with the Switch. Really, really enjoyed it. But yeah, fun little game.
What's like the would you say the central appeal of Catan?
I think because unlike Monopoly, you're not tied to chance. You're not moving linearly, and you're also able to scheme in multiple different ways. So what happens with a game such as Pandemic, which is recently popular as a board game, Pandemic, Joe Rogan even mentioned it, I got it for my family for Christmas, is that you have one goal: you fight the disease. Monopoly, don't land on a space where you pay money, right? A lot of these games are linear, and Catan is the closest to that a structured board game will get to Dungeons and Dragons, but have structure to it. So even life is linear, in the way that board game functions. So there's others that are well done. Risk, you're something else that you have to think about. You have to strategize a lot, and Catan equals that with a lot simpler format and a lot less time consuming, I think, although it does take a while to set up. But I think the appeal of Catan is that you have 5 or 6 major strategies that you can interchange because the game is so dynamic. Within game it changes so much. So it's just a very well balanced board game. And I have yet to see someone win with one strategy multiple times in a row. I haven't seen that. You have to be quick on your feet. So
the biggest thing about a board game that you're kind of losing with this video game is the sit down and play with other people feel. Does this specific video game kind of lose anything because of that, or do you think it makes up for the aspect that it's not an actual board game, physical board game that you're playing with other people in other ways?
They do their best. So you can kind of fake that a little bit. You can make it pseudo texture. I'll say it that way. You can create a fake texture with a controller vibration with the way that a piece clunks down onto the board visually. If you shake the screen a little bit, it feels like there's maybe your brain interprets that as movement coming at you. So it can feel like something, but again, it will never substitute for real pieces in your fingers and real dice in your hand. But I mean, it's a well-designed game. Like I said, the mechanics are a tiny bit clunky, but I still really enjoy it and pick it up often as a break from our main feature, Axiom Verge, and from Animal Crossing and things like that.
Cool. Another great suggestion there from the casual Jared Benson. Like I said, I always anytime that you bring something up, I'm always itching to get into it. Catan is definitely one of them. And I have a couple other board games. The Jackbox games on the Switch
those are great. We should mention that. Next week we should do that.
Okay, yeah. So Catan might just be right up my alley for a specific... Because you do get that desire every once in a while.
You do.
To kind of just play a specific genre, And Catan might just be right up my alley here soon. We'll see. So, those have been the games we've been playing. And with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into the next segment, the default segment. Of course, the default segment is a rotating segment that we like to pose a lot of different topics into, and most of them are going to be video game related. This week is a little bit less about video games, a little bit more about, and the way that I've phrased this is real-world limitations that stop us from doing the things that we love.
Also titled, How Jared Ruined Josh's Day.
Right, and we talked about this briefly at the very beginning of the podcast. We had another game picked to be recovering this week, and the whole idea was actually presented to me from an audience member of Bard's Backlog. We are coming up on the first week of May, and this audience member thought it would be a good idea to basically do something for May the 4th because of Star Wars and everything that is culturally tied to that date with Star Wars. I picked a Star Wars game. May the 4th be with you. So we were going to jump into Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, which was a funky little game on the Nintendo Switch, one of the only Star Wars games available there. And we were going to cover that. But, Jared, go ahead and take over and just explain what exactly happened with that.
I am so embarrassed, but I'll talk about it. This is what makes me a casual, to be honest. This is one of the largest reasons why I'm just a casual gamer. When I was in high school, first, the Call of Duty craze was in full swing. Mountain Dew, Doritos, Call of Duty, your bros, the weekend sleepovers, that was the thing. But what happened was that I had been playing games. I don't know if this is the cause. I'll just reiterate what happened. I'd been playing games on normal TVs, whatever else. My friends who were getting really into this started to buy plasmas, HDs, HD TVs, LEDs, all that stuff, OLED TVs. I don't know if OLEDs were out at the time, but anyway, I'll cut the story short. One day I went over to a friend's house. We sat down to play Call of Duty, and the HD TV made me motion sick. I can play Call of Duty or Skyrim on a computer. I can play a game that's like Axiom Verge just fine, right? But first-person shooters on HD with all that movement legitimately makes me motion sick within 5 minutes of sitting down. And I felt it coming on. I was like, uh-oh, Josh is not going to like this. But I text Josh and said, dude, I'm sorry, I cannot. This game makes me motion sick. Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast. Josh, I don't know if you went ahead and played it, but Josh does a great job of picking the games that we play. He gives me a couple great options. He always chooses a list, and he's like, what do you think about this? He always chooses great games, and this is one of them, and I just can't do it. It makes me motion sick. And so, that's how my real-world limitation stops me from doing what I love, which is, this podcast with Josh, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess I was made aware of this the first time, your little issue when we were playing Doom. I don't know if you remember this.
I do.
In the college dorm room. And Doom is this incredibly fast-paced first-person shooter, and you're flying around the map, killing all these demons and stuff. And Jared, I just saw him tense back up just a little bit, and all of a sudden you just looked away, and you're like, I can't watch this. And I was
true.
I was so confused. I was like, why not? And then you're like, it's making me motion sick. And I was like, oh. And that's not anything I've ever had to deal with. I kind of feel like I have this immunity to motion sickness. I used to read in the car and get car sick so intensely, to the point where I'd be puking after, but I would just keep doing it. I loved reading so much growing up that I just tortured myself into this terrible case of motion sickness until I almost started to get immune to it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, but I've never had to deal with it since then, really. So it was a specific, I don't want to say handicap, but this limitation that you had that surprised me, and also made me think other people are dealing with actual things that are keeping them from enjoying the stuff that even I love, that I want them to play. And that's a bummer, to be honest, dude. That bums me out that you were unable to fully enjoy and experience games to that level. And I don't want to make this a downer segment or anything, but it is something to keep in mind that other people there is such a thing as a limitation, and it is something that I think gamers need to keep in mind, but then also that like just people in general need to keep in mind about the people around them, and if we can do anything to help that, we should. So of course I switched the game so that you didn't have to go through a harrowing experience.
I am eternally grateful. It's a humbling thing for sure. It's embarrassing. I don't mind talking about it, but it is embarrassing, obviously. Oh, it's weak sauce. But think about the other advantages that I do have. I love roller coasters. I've never had an issue with the roller coasters, even spinning ones.
Okay.
I can read in the car. I can be on my phone for long periods of time without getting a headache. That's something people struggle with. I can, watch a movie, watch TV, stuff like that. I don't deal with it outside of things like that. But like in our lives, there's always things that limit us from the things that we love. Imagine being a Josh, can you still hear me?
I can still hear you, yeah.
Our video died,
I can't
but
see
that's
you.
okay. There's things that keep us from doing what we love all the time. Think about wanting to be an NFL player and being short, small, scrawny. Think about wanting to be healthy and being born with a frail body. There's so many other things to be not necessarily just stressed about, but to be, feel as if there's an injustice. Motion sickness is just a small one, but it is sad. And it is humbling when something so small keeps you from doing something that you love, for sure.
Yeah, and we all have different kinds of limitations. Like it's not all just physical, but I think it's important to keep in mind like the fact that other people are going through these things, and that accessibility in general to the things that we love is important. There was a big controversy last year surrounding Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, which was one of the most difficult games released last year, and probably one of the most difficult games released in the last 10 years. And the whole argument was centered around the idea of accessibility. Some people who purchased the $60 game just weren't able to dive into it and enjoy it the way that others were. And then there's the fact of people like with actual legitimate handicaps trying to play the game who just weren't able to execute on the nuance of the parry system that was built into that game. And a lot of people were essentially just asking for the developers to put in a little bit more accessibility. Maybe just another mode where there's just a little bit easier of a setting on the enemies or something like that. And it was this really interesting topic of discussion that was going on that just points out that, hey, we're all a little different, and we all have different things that are going to hold us back, and we shouldn't allow those things to keep us from doing the things we love. But if they do, I guess if they do, like, we as a society and as like individuals should be trying to bridge that gap for the people around us. I don't know how I'd be able to do that with you, Jared, but
no, I mean, unfortunately, there is no way. When I play first-person shooters, and there's even a decent amount of resolution, and it's funny because there wasn't much in this game. This is a very pixelated game. It's kind of clunky. It looks like a PlayStation 2 game, is what it will remind you of. And it's still swinging around. Being in that first-person position makes me motion sick, and I can just tell. It'll feel like someone is like pouring fermented liquid directly into my stomach. It does not feel good at all. It's awful. It's disgusting, and I hate it. So Josh was gracious enough, but yeah, life is unfair. This is how life is unfair to me. So,
well, I'm glad that this happened because it was a simple game. Like I didn't make you buy Doom Eternal, which was another game that got released that was $60,
Right.
So we're able to avoid it in that way. But that is something I'm going to try and keep in mind going forward. And just as the audience knows, that is a limitation we may come across. And there are other games and I'm curious how you would do in VR. Have you ever tried VR?
I have not, and I really want to try VR because I want to play Beat Saber. I love watching Beat Saber videos on YouTube. That's one of my favorite things to do at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep.
That game is so much fun.
I can't wait to play it. I'm going to try it. John and I, Josh and I's mutual friend John, and I did a Jurassic Park VR at Dave & Buster's, and I was fine with that. So I don't know what it is about. Something about first-person shooters, man. The pace of them, how quickly they are, throwing grenades. I think a lot of it has to do with the running too. The running it tries to be realistic, right? Because I don't have motion sickness issues with Skyrim. So it's interesting. It just depends. But I was very disappointed. I'm sorry we have to let our team member down, or our listener down. So I apologize. You come on and be Josh's co-host since I'm incapable.
No, don't say that. Anyway, Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast is a really interesting game. I was picking it because it was different from the other games that we were playing.
Yeah.
And because of May the 4th coming up, but it's totally fine that we're not able to get to that this week. With that being said, though, let's go ahead and talk about the game that we're going to be talking about this week. The pick of the week, and that is Axiom Verge. Had you heard about Axiom Verge before we got into this, Jared?
No, not at all.
Real quick, is your video turned off, or is mine?
My phone got to 25%. That's why. So it turned it off automatically. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's fair. Okay. Well, Jared and I can't see each other anymore. It's very sad. But
Sorry.
It's fine. Axiom Verge is a little game that was released March 31st, 2015 on PC, and is a Metroidvania that at the time stood out from the crowd upon its release thanks to its ability to invoke the same loneliness in space feel that the original Metroid had, and because of its other obvious inspirations to Nintendo's beloved franchise. So it was a little lightning in a bottle at the time when there weren't a whole lot of Metroidvanias out, and this one came out on PC and really instantly got a cult following. The entire game was developed by one man, Thomas Happ, which I think is a feat that must be recognized. That's incredible. Yeah. Really cool little detail about this specific game, but this is a really classic Metroidvania. If you have ever played a Metroidvania, that's what Axiom Verge is. You're set in a 2D plane. You're going left to right, exploring this little bizarre world and trying to unlock different abilities to move forward in the story. And the abilities, of course, stack, or they improve yourself in different ways and unlock different parts of the world that you can go and get into. And that's what Axiom Verge is to its very core. This was your first Metroidvania, is that correct, Jared?
Absolutely, and a great experience overall. But yeah, it was my first.
So you did enjoy it. You enjoyed the experience.
Josh, I loved it. I really was. I first started playing it, and I thought to myself, I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know. I'll give it a shot. I'll play some more. And then I got to 10% cleared, and then 50% cleared, and I was like, I just like this game more and more. I really did enjoy it, and towards the end there, I was cranking in some hours. I think I put 9.5 hours into the game, minimum, last time I checked. Really, really enjoyed it.
So what part of it would you say was like difficult to click, but once it did, really made the thing more smooth? Like, was there a specific aspect to it that like maybe at first was just having like a difficult time clicking with you?
Yeah. So when you think of the games that we have been playing, we tried to play Star Wars, but like Star Wars in that vein, we played Ni no Kuni, we played Zelda, Breath of the Wild. All of those games allow a almost unlimited sphere in which to attack and back off and defend and different things like that. It's a full 3D experience. With a 2D, with a Metroidvania, you were limited to up 45 degrees and straight across. You know what I mean? Right in front of you, directly above you, or 45 degrees angle upwards, right? So that means like placement, strategy, the rhythm, how you flow through the game isn't as... It's more mechanical, if I could say it that way. So for me, trying to adjust to, the 2D version of things, the frustration of coming up against walls constantly because you're so limited in the game at first when you first start it, struggling with, well, I don't really like this weapon, but all right, let me try to find another weapon. And there's very little plot right at first. It's very vague. So all these kind of things, the tiny little barriers to entry, give it some time. And so for me, when you open Legend of Zelda, you're thrust into the world. Almost everything is revealed. You know how it's going to end right away. And this game isn't like that. I think Thomas Happ, since he's the only guy who developed it, really, we can kind of throw his name out there a lot, did a great job with balancing the vagueness of the plot with what you will reveal. And it took me a while just to get used to it. It's different for me. I've never played a Metroidvania. I've only played 3D games, right? So it was different, but I really did love that he gave me just enough to I'll give it some more time. And then I just fell in love with it.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that it clicked, because that was one of the things going into it that I was curious about. Sometimes I'm picking these games just to see how you experience it, Jared.
So you're just messing with me. Great.
Not to mess with you, but just to see, because there is a specific thing that you can get out of a first time experience.
Yes.
And that's something I would say I'm missing with this game. Not only have I played through it before, but I've played so many Metroidvanias that this one just felt like comfort food to me. And I love these types of games, but I really wanted to get that feeling and see how it translated with someone who hadn't ever experienced it before. But you bring up the vagueness of it, and I think that's something that Thomas Happ does well at the forefront of the game. Is he builds this sense of mystery, and it's all tied into the bizarreness of the story. Jared, what did you think of the story?
I really love the story. So I confessed to Josh I was upset earlier. I was just like, Josh, I can't beat the final boss. This is so embarrassing. but Josh will attest to the fact that the game is very difficult. At least
it is,
and doubly so for someone who's casual like myself, who doesn't actually have a natural affinity for video games. So, and we'll talk about one scheme that makes the game particularly difficult towards the end of it, one of the mechanics. But I liked the vagueness of plot, because I thought that you can go. I thought you could go anywhere with this. He's thrown to a... Did he teleport? Did he die? Has he been recreated? And all of that's true at the same time, but you just don't know.
Right.
And while Thomas allows you to get used to the mechanics of the game and leaves you hanging on plot, you're not there for the plot anyway. This is a Metroidvania. It's about the rhythm. It's about the flow, how you move through the caverns and the tunnels, and how you deal with enemies, your strategy for accommodating different levels of space, different types of defense and offense. So he allows you to fall in love with the mechanics, and then introduces the major crux of the plot at 50%. I remember thinking, okay, a little bit of a nugget here, a little bit of a bone here at 10%, but it really takes off plot-wise once you get to 50% of the map cleared. And at that point, you're completely invested. So I like the way he did it.
Yeah, I do too. And the appeal of a sci-fi story is hard to nail, I feel like.
Yes, agree completely.
You can go really cheesy. Yep. You can kind of hit situations where it's a little too weird or too vague even, and that's something this game started out with, was a lot of vagueness. But I think he does a really good job of opening up the story and establishing rules that you see played out in really cool ways. So the whole crux of it is that you play as this character named Trace, and he's just this regular scientist who is working in a lab. There's an explosion, and when he wakes up, he's in this totally different, bizarre, alien world. And that's where a lot of the Metroid influence comes in.
Yep.
In the Metroid games, you're a space hunter who gets put onto an alien isolated world where there's nothing but you and the aliens that you're fighting. And Trace has a very similar experience, but instead he doesn't know what's going on, and neither do you as the player. And so you get this sense of just mystery of what the heck is happening, where am I, why am I here, how do I move forward? And he's just a regular person, so he pushes through the best he possibly can, but he really raises some interesting questions as he goes along. And then as the world starts to fill in, you start to realize there's a lot more at play here than initially was revealed. And I think that's a a testament not only to Thomas Happ's ability to not only build a game but to tell a story.
Yes.
And he did a really good job doing that.
I think
now, we don't need to.
I think additionally too, the way that he frames Trace as a scientist who's very intelligent, and you see that later on in the writing when Trace comes out and says what you or I would say in certain situations. Sometimes you lose the connection between yourself and the character, especially if you're playing a character, when they do things that are just so obviously scripted for the sake of plot. But what I think actually I found oddly refreshing, I didn't expect to find it in this game, was the fact that Trace would say actually what I would say in that situation. He confronts these different characters earlier in the game than you would think. A lot of times writers wait till the very end to tie up all the loose ends in one giant package. And yet I liked the way that he wrote the character, and I found it very relatable, as oddly as that sounds. As odd as that sounds.
No, I agree. Like, he feels like a normal person caught in a strange situation. Yes. And he does kind of feel like an everyman character, but it's revealed he's so much more throughout the game. And I don't really want to spoil it all here. Yes. I'll say that it deals with a lot of sci-fi elements. Obviously, he's on a different world. There's a lot of like creatures and things that you come across, and like giant aliens that you end up like partnering with to get through the world. Like Ophelia is the main one that you meet at first, and she's just like this. She looks like part of a computer. Like, and that was the other thing that this game, like, at first I don't know if I'm on an alien world or if I'm stuck in a computer, because there was like an explosion that happened, and he does a really good job of like just keeping you on edge on exactly what's going on. And there's a lot of like dealing with clones. There's dealing with alternative physics. There's a war that happens over future tech. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this game, and it's told in a very subtle, simple way, but told really well. And it's weird.
Agree.
It's definitely weird.
I think it's weird, but he does weird really well. I think
he does.
All of the characters, and the animation is gorgeous, to be honest with you. You mentioned here one of the odd things about it is that you're pairing up with these giant kind of robotic human-looking creatures, and one of them is revealed later to be a soldier. One of them is revealed later to be I don't remember at the time, but you can also see elements of those characters later on. You mentioned that you ride a giant head, like it's a person's face, a platform on top. You ride on it and pick a direction, and like that weirdness is done well. The art style flows great, and the music too. I think the music actually lends itself to the weirdness of the game, to the fact that it's a Metroidvania with, like, I'll say, air quotes, older graphics. It feels older, especially when you open it up. It's a very tin panny sound to it. But as you go along, the main menu, the title screen. But as you go along, the music lends itself to the weight of what you're doing, and the weight of the story writing, and to the classicness of the game, despite it being made in 2015. There's a lot going on here, but he does weird really well. Everything flows very cohesively. The music, the characters, the design, the art, all of that stuff is a condensed package that's very easy to accept. It feels natural. It's great.
He has a very specific design philosophy, and he nails every part of it.
I completely agree.
And sci-fi music to the max. The graphics themselves, even though it is 16-bit, I believe, is what he's going for, and it's very chunky in its own way. It's still very sleek looking.
It is,
and there's a lot of little details that, like even just in the animation, like you said, that really make the game a well-made package.
Yes.
I can't help but think that, like, if this game were to have been released back in the 90s, where this like franchise would be now, like, if it had developed along the same pace as our the games industry has developed, we would probably have like AAA games with tons of lore built into them for this series.
Yes.
And it stands next to other classic games that were released back then that are standing the test of time. And I think that's a real big testament, not only to the game itself, but to Thomas Happ. So there's a lot going on here, and And it's a really great game, and it is a pure Metroidvania, like I said. Lots of exploration. What did you think of the exploration? Was it incredibly difficult for you, Jared, at first?
No. At first, yes. What you keep coming across is, so the map is broken down into 8 bits. Like it will look like a Galaga enemy when you unlock the map. It's broken down into these cubes that are like kind of like not square mile, but like the idea is like an acre of land that you'll see. It's very square footage, and so you end up with these cubes of exploration, and you try to fill out the map. And a map that's been completely filled out has a dark border line on it. So that okay, I've gone as far as I can there. And then you have to kind of not remember per se, but as you go through the game, the enemies get more difficult, but that makes what you've cleared behind you easier to get through once you go back to it. So to be honest, by the time I turned around and started exploring, because I was like, I'm not going to be able to keep beating these bosses if I don't level up a bit. I need to go find some, in the game, power nodes to increase my health, to increase my weapon damage. By the time I had to turn around and go explore, it felt like a very enjoyable speed run to me, because I had slowly, not even knowingly, but Thomas had allows you to kind of temper and build your repertoire of weapons and health and how you deal with certain enemies. So by the time you turn around and have to go explore some, areas previously unknown like I did, it felt very fluid, and it was enjoyable, very enjoyable at that point, because you have more control and mastery of the game than you did before. So I really enjoyed the fact that the map was so spread out and so laid out and takes some time to explore. It's not, easily accessible. You have to go through certain portals to get to certain areas. You can't just fast travel. You know what I mean? Some of that, we take that for granted. And I really enjoyed that.
Very boots on the ground.
Yeah. How about yourself?
No, I would say the same thing. Like the way that he nails the pacing, and that's a big thing for me with Metroidvanias. Yep. The pacing of the exploration is what I like to say is.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, there's a sense of discovery that can be built into these games, and a sense of improvement that I think is key. Yes. And he does a great job of just introducing new elements to you, like the glitching element, where you can glitch through walls, or like new weapons, which I didn't necessarily like fall in love with every new weapon I got, but it was a new way of attacking the game and approaching the different enemies that was always interesting and unique. And he does a really good job of just putting these elements in at the right time as you kind of are getting to the point where you're like, okay, like I'm kind of running around in circles, or like I'm trying to figure out where to go next, and you kind of pinpoint, okay, here's on the map a spot where I haven't been yet, and you go there. It's like almost always felt like it was the perfect time to receive something new.
Yes.
And you would get that. Like, he does a really good job of putting that into the game in very specific segments, and because of that, the game moves. It feels like it's moving at a decent clip, at a steady pace, and it keeps you moving forward. And then on top of that, adding in the intrigue of the story, what exactly is going on in the world, how Athetos, the evil character in the game, which has very specific ties to Trace, is how he is affecting what's going on. Like little moments like that where he's giving you tidbits of what's going on, just worked perfectly in tandem with the gameplay and how the abilities are unlocked, and the flow of even just fighting your casual enemy, and what exactly you're doing to deal with the new enemy types that you're coming across, and how exactly you tackle them.
And I think too, when you find new weapons, and then you have to turn around and kind of go back and explore some of the areas that you have, the weapons that he gives you later on make exploration in reverse direction easier. And then again, it feels more like mastery. It feels more like a speed run of a place that you've been before, that you feel comfortable taking charge of. And I think, I'll have to tell you about the glitching, because that bothered the snot out of me. It really did. Because you get 3 levels of glitching, right? You're allowed to like phase through things, and which fits in with how the character is written and what his abilities are. And then but it levels up. So you're allowed to slowly step through walls the first time. Then you're allowed to phase through one layer in a certain direction, and then you phase even further, and you do damage along the way. And so what you find is that as you level up, you start to use that, especially the third level where you start doing damage, you have to use that to take out enemies. It actually becomes a crucial part of how you do it. And I could not, for the life of me, figure out how to weaponize that well. I kid you not, Josh, I was getting so frustrated. I was like, oh, he wants me to use the glitching to, like, hurt my enemies while I know this is how he designed this baddie, so I have to do it this way, but it's so hard to master that, like, flicking the controller as you move around. Right,
because you double flick in one direction, and actually that even kind of would throw me off a lot, I would say, because sometimes I do it on accident.
Yes. I was so frustrated.
Yeah, no, so I totally agree with you there. That was actually a very interesting trope that he built into it. And of course, the whole game, like I said, kind of feels like you're in a computer.
Yeah.
Like, some of the characters that you come across seem like they're, like, computerized beings.
Yes.
Or, like, are built into and, like, the world itself almost feels like you're in a network. And he, of course, gives you these glitching abilities, and there's even a gun that you get, or not a gun, but like a ray that you get that can transform the world and make it glitch out. And it all just ties really well, even into the graphics. But it's a very interesting trope, but I would agree, it can get very frustrating and kind of in the way. Parts most of the time.
You know, you mentioned the weapons earlier. You don't fall in love with every weapon, but I found that I didn't fall in love with every weapon every time, but I've used all of those weapons in different scenarios. And it was interesting to me that I didn't fall in love with it immediately, but if I couldn't pass an area, I was like, what am I doing wrong? So I went through, I was like, all right, let me try this weapon. Let me try this, which adds a layer to the game. He's like, let me throw all of my creative power behind designing this gameplay, these mechanics, this world map. And he comes up with the weirdest aliens to fight. He comes up with the weirdest guns that don't even seem like it'd be a good idea for a gun. Like, I don't even... And it's incredibly enjoyable on that aspect. But the glitching specifically, bothered the heck out of me.
I'm glad that it did, because it definitely bothered me too. No, I think it's a great note to give that he, like, gives you these tools and then lets you use them in unique and interesting ways throughout the world, and always, like, in ways that push you to view the world in a way that maybe you hadn't before. And maybe when you first get stuck going in one direction, you can kind of tell, okay, the map isn't completely filled out though.
Yes.
I can keep going. What am I doing wrong, or what tool am I not using that I could use to move forward? And that's a really great aspect of the game as well.
In addition to he gives you weapons, and then he also gives you power-ups, and then he also gives you ways to increase your mobility by, like, exponentially. When you're able to you find a certain thing that allows you to teleport to a location that you can travel to. Like, once you find that tool, that changes the whole game once again. And so I think the way he slowly introduces his best tricks as the creator of the game is actually genius. And I imagine Thomas Happ thinking through all of these things must be like the most nerdy, engineer-minded guy you've ever met to have designed a game like this. And I think you wrote something down here, like, for being made by one guy. I'll let you say that later, but I completely agree with that statement.
Yeah, no, all I said was for being made by one person who handled everything, and he did everything. He did the graphics, he did the story, he did the music. Like, he wrote the whole thing, he composed the whole thing. It's an impressive game.
Absolutely.
It's a very impressive game coming from one person. And I, for one, am looking forward to the second game, which is supposed to come out this year.
Ooh.
I don't know if you knew that, Jared.
I'll definitely have to pick that up.
Yeah, Axiom Verge 2 was announced last year, and it's supposed to be coming out. Who knows, with COVID, like, everything's kind of been changed, and schedules are all off, so who knows. But this is a very specific feel. Do you think it could be off-putting? Like, just the vibe of the game. Like, do you feel like it, or do you feel like he does a good enough job nailing all the different aspects that it really is cohesive?
No, I think it really is cohesive, especially if you just take a second to, like, step back and look at the entire package, and also incorporate, like, all right, what's he doing for music? What's he doing for animation? What's he doing for graphics? What's he doing for characters? They all make sense. It is one giant cohesive package, and I think partially that probably lends itself to the fact that Thomas did do everything himself. It is one cohesive package.
Sure.
It's a dream. It feels like he's been thinking about this for a while, and he's put some serious thought and some serious love into it. I don't think anything about it is off-putting, other than perhaps the mechanics themselves. The fact that you are limited a little bit in, the direction you can go, and how you can shoot, and how, you know what I mean? Like, that kind of thing is a little bit more rhythm-based, a little bit more strategy-based, and you do have to be a better gamer than average. You know what I mean? Like, it's just different. So
no, I agree.
Yeah. So, and for me, that was a struggle. I texted Josh a couple times. I was like, this is annoyingly hard, but you power through it, you level up, and you get better at it. And I don't think anything about it is off-putting, unless you just don't like that game. And if you don't like classic games, you probably won't like this one, although it's better than classic games. But it does have a classic feel to it, and its limitations. So something to note. But no, I don't think anything about it is off-putting. I'd actually recommend this to anyone who likes, to get good at something, that likes to master it.
Okay.
And doesn't necessarily always like to play for leisure.
Well, honestly, it excites me that the game clicked with you, and that you were able to kind of get into a rhythm, and it got better as it went along. I think that's a good sign for the game. What do you think? Do you think this game should be entered into our Hall of Games?
I think my opinion carries less than yours because you've played other Metroidvanias, but I'd say yeah. I mean, this is a great all-around game. It's a very cohesive package, great artistry, great mechanics, great characters and plot. I absolutely think yes, totally.
I actually, going into this conversation, was thinking no. Partially because of the fact that I have played other Metroidvanias.
Yeah, right.
But I will say this game stands up, and I think it will stand the test of time as well. I can't say that for every Metroidvania I've played, and this one actually captures like I said, the original Metroid feel, like what that game was going for: a sense of isolation, a sense of exploration, a sense of upgrades and building your character, and the idea of discovery, and this really interesting world that you're exploring and learning
Alien,
more about.
Different, unique. Yep. This
game captures that feeling in a way that I don't think very many Metroidvanias actually do. So I'm gonna say yes. I'm going to say yes to this game and allow it into our Hall of Games.
I like it.
Cool. And you're saying yes as well,
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely. Yep. Hands down.
Cool. Ka-chunk! With that in mind.
High-end sound
another
effects
game.
right there.
I know, right? I need to get a soundboard or something. I feel like I'm picking good games.
I totally agree.
Too many good, because we haven't. The only game I think that hasn't made it into our Hall of Games thus far is Luigi's Mansion.
Yep.
So
and
I'm gonna have to pick a bad one. And actually, I was hoping Star Wars was not gonna make it.
Were you? So we can have less in there. We've put almost every game in. No, we do have to mention why this reinforces why we put Fortnite, just if we could tag that on. This reinforces, I don't know if you guys saw Travis Scott, rapper. I don't even really listen to his music, but if you put on a Travis Scott station on Pandora, Spotify, you're going to get a consistent vibe for as long as that music is playing. His music is very cohesive. And I honestly thought, as I listened to his music a little bit, I was like, this guy, it makes sense that they chose him. So I stepped a little too far forward. Fortnite had a live concert. They had a giant, 92-meter Travis Scott dancing around the Fortnite map. Full holographic Travis Scott taking place, transferring all of these, all of the players into different realms of the map and different things. It was a technical wonder to behold. It was loads of fun. And Fortnite, that just re-emphasizes why we put it in the Hall of Games. Not necessarily off its merits as a battle royale, because there are better ones, but as a game changer, as a culture changer,
and as a culture infuser in a way that other games just I don't think have ever imagined.
No one's on their level. No one is on their level.
Yeah, the level of imagination, and then the ability to execute on that on such a grand scale is mighty impressive.
Blending the video game world and the real world, especially with someone as mainstream as Travis Scott, is just. It's a level of gaming that is unprecedented. We have never had games be this cool ever before. And
I saw a lot of people who were just like, this is weird. Why would you want to go to a virtual concert like this. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But to me, I was like, no.
You don't
like,
understand.
This was a feat
Yep.
that was pulled off, and you can't deny them that.
Cannot agree more.
For sure.
Yep.
So with that in mind, Axiom Verge, another inclusion into the Hall of Games. Good stuff. Great game. And it's cheap, I think. It's only like $15. And it's on everything now. So you can buy it on the PlayStation 4. You could buy it on the Switch. Initially, it was only on Steam, but it got enough of a cult following that it was able to expand onto other platforms, which is great. So largely accessible and really well worth the purchase if you're interested in our conversation that we had, or if you're interested in Metroidvanias in general. It's definitely up there on that tier. So Axiom Verge for sure. And I did not forget, but I have an announcement for next time, and that is the next game we'll be covering. So again, thanks for listening to the podcast. This is pretty much it for us this week, but be looking forward to next time. We are going to be covering Okami HD for this next episode. So if you guys are interested, you can look up what that game is, but we'll be covering that. If you've ever played it before, let us know. And again, write us in questions on Twitter for Okami HD, which we'll be covering next time. But that's all we have for you this week. So thanks for listening, and we will catch you all on the flip side.